you ever felt like there is something or someone following you? No, I'm not talking about a figure in the shadows, nor a stranger on the street. I'm talking about something more intimate, more invasive, something you cannot see, but that is always there.
A silent presence that watches every step you take, every word you say, every gesture you make when you think no one is looking. It's not paranoia. You're not crazy. That presence exists, and you created it. It's called the imaginary gaze, and it has been with you for as long as you can remember, since the day in your childhood when someone laughed at you for the way you walked or the way you pronounced a word. From that moment on, you began to live for the eyes of others, as if your life were a scene and you, an actor forced to repeat a role you didn't even choose. Have you never wondered why, every time you enter a room, you adjust your clothes, correct your posture, pretend to check your phone, even when there's nothing new? Have you never wondered why the idea of making a mistake in public paralyzes you, as if a failure were a social death sentence? Here is the brutal truth. No one is watching you the way you think. No one keeps a file of your mistakes. No one mentally records your slip-ups. The world does not revolve around you, but you live as if it does. And that is the core of your anxiety. What terrifies you is not the real judgment. It's the judgment you imagine. It's the mental show where everyone points at you, laughs, criticizes you. But you know what? That audience isn't there. It never was. It's a theater your mind has built brick by brick with every insecurity you didn't resolve. And now tell me, what would you do if no one could see you? Who would you be if you knew with absolute certainty that no one is paying attention? If I told you that all your worries, your fears, your procrastinations are nothing more than chains made of smoke, chains that you yourself keep alive. Because here comes the darkest twist of all. The prison you live in has no bars. You build it daily with thoughts, with beliefs, with assumptions. And the worst part is that even if they opened the door for you, you would stay inside. Because the judgment of others has become your habitat. You are a slave to the other's eye. But that eye does not exist. And now that you know this, are you going to keep acting? Are you going to keep editing your personality to fit into invisible molds? Are you going to keep seeking validation in empty glances and hollow applause? Or are you going to break the mirror? Because yes, all of this starts with a mirror, one in which you don't see yourself, but the distorted image you believe others have of you. An image you adjust every day without realizing that the more you perfect it, the further you move away from yourself. Jean-Paul Sartre said, "Hell is other people." But that doesn't mean others are monsters. It means the real torment is living under their gaze. When your freedom depends on being approved, you have ceased to be yourself. And the worst part is, no one forces you. No one puts a knife to your neck demanding perfection. It's you who censors yourself, who disguises yourself, who negotiates your authenticity in exchange for acceptance. But tell me, what happens when you achieve it? When they applaud you, when they accept you, when you fit in? Do you feel peace, or do you feel fear of losing that place? Because when you live for applause, every silence sounds like a threat. You are trapped in a paradox. You long to be seen, but you fear being exposed. You want to stand out, but without risking ridicule. And so you spend your life between masks, filters, excuses, hiding who you are for fear of not being enough. But now comes the most terrifying part of all. And you need to hear it. Most people around you are just like you, pretending, smiling so they're not singled out, saying what's expected, posting content to feel validated. No one truly lives. Everyone acts. Everyone is trapped in the same illusion. An illusion that says, if I expose myself, they'll destroy me. But it's a lie. The only real destruction is of your identity when you decide to hide it. You have built a personality based on assumptions. You assume that if you speak loudly, you annoy, that if you dress differently, you don't fit in, that if you fail, they'll laugh. And you know what's ironic? That those who dare, those who fail and get up, are the only ones who move forward. While you drown in paralysis, others make 1,000 mistakes and keep walking, because they understood something you haven't accepted yet. Life is not a judgment. It's an experiment. And now, before continuing, take a pause. Seriously ask yourself, how many decisions have you made this month just out of fear of what others will think? How many times have you kept silent about what you really wanted to say? How many times have you disguised your opinion just to fit in? That is social narcissism, believing that everything revolves around you, that everyone is watching you. But the reality is much harsher and much more liberating. No one cares as much as you think. They're too busy fighting their own battles. And that's what they haven't taught you. Irrelevance is freedom. The day you accept you're not the center of the universe, you can start acting without fear. That's when you stop needing approval and begin living with intention, when you stop acting and start existing. But it's not easy, because leaving the illusion is painful. The ego resists. It wants to keep believing you are important, that your image is vital, because if the image falls, the ego crumbles. And that's when many give up. They return to the disguise. They take refuge in others' validation like an addict returning to their drug. But not you. You've come this far. You're seeing this for a reason. Because a part of you is fed up. Tired of pretending, of adapting, of begging for attention. And now comes the moment of decision. Are you going to keep living for eyes that aren't even looking? Or are you going to take control and start living from within? Sartre said it clearly. Human beings are condemned to be free. Do you understand? Condemned. Because freedom is not comfortable. It's terrifying. When you no longer have anyone to blame, only yourself remains. But that's where authenticity begins. That's where real life begins. And listen carefully. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need likes, nor approving looks, nor silent applause. You only need silence. Your silence. The one born when you stop acting. When you stop playing the role of someone you're not. When you start moving without thinking about judgment. Speaking without asking permission. Failing without guilt. Then yes, then finally you are free. But wait, don't go yet, because this is not the end. We're going to talk about something else, something no one dares to face, about what happens when you finally stop worrying about what others think of you and realize that you yourself are your harshest critic. And now begins the darkest part, the most revealing, the most necessary. Because once you free yourself from others' gaze, you face something even more dangerous, your own. Yes, yours. Yours is the cruelest, the most insatiable, the one that never switches off. You've spent years fearing what others think of you, but what really eats you up is what you think of yourself when no one is looking. When you're alone, when you no longer have to pretend. Have you ever faced that silence? That echo that repeats over and over that you're not enough, that you're not doing what you should, that you're not up to the task? Because here is the big secret. What you fear most isn't social rejection, but the internal confirmation that everything you suspect about yourself might be true. That maybe you're not as interesting, capable, or strong as you appear. And that's why you need others to approve you. Because if they validate you, then you can momentarily silence that inner voice that devours you. But only momentarily. Because it comes back. It always comes back. as soon as you're alone, as soon as the lights go out and the notifications stop, and you realize that all that effort to please, to impress, to be someone hasn't filled anything. Because you can't cover an existential void with likes. You can't soothe an identity crisis with kind words from strangers. There is a truth that stings, that cuts like a blade, but you need to hear it. You've built your image to protect yourself, not to find yourself. Your so-called personality is nothing more than a layer of defense, a strategy, a refuge disguised as identity, but it's not you, and you know it. You project yourself as someone confident, fun, successful, but deep down there's something rotten, something off, something that doesn't feel real. And do you know why? Because it's not. Because what you show isn't who you are. It's what you believe others will accept. And that, sooner or later, shows. Cracks, collapses. Because no mask can withstand the weight of consciousness. And here enters the most terrifying concept of all: self-alienation. It's when you look in the mirror and don't recognize yourself, not because you don't know who you are, but because you haven't even given yourself permission to discover it. You've lived so long trying to be acceptable that you forgot to be authentic. You have alienated yourself. You've become a stranger inside your own body, a spectator of your acts, an actor who no longer remembers his real name. And here's something no one says. Living like this is brutally exhausting. It's more tiring to pretend than to feel, more exhausting to control every word than to let it flow, more exhausting to protect the image than to embrace the truth. How much longer will you endure? How much more will you sacrifice to be accepted by people who don't even accept themselves? Social narcissism hasn't just made you believe everyone's watching you. It's also made you lose touch with your inner compass. You no longer know what you want. You don't know if you like what you do, or if you just do it because it looks good. You don't know if you really enjoy your achievements, or if you just enjoy telling about them. Pleasure has become a showcase. Joy, a strategy. Your life is a display window, and you are the mannequin. But here comes the breaking point. All that can end, and it can end today, because now you know what's happening. And once you know, you have two options: keep acting or start living. There are no other paths. You cannot serve two masters. Either you surrender to your authenticity with all the vertigo it involves, or you condemn yourself to the other's gaze, forever. But let's go further. Let's open another wound. Are you ready? Good. Because there is an even subtler and more perverse way this system controls you, and it's called comparison. You have been trained to compare yourself, constantly, silently, without stopping. Every time you see someone better, younger, more attractive, more successful, you feel like you're worth less. And then you seek to reaffirm yourself, to be visible again, to regain your place on a podium that doesn't exist. It's the perfect trap. The more you compare, the further you get from yourself. The more you disintegrate your center, the deeper you dive into the fiction of "I should be like." And do you know what happens when you live comparing yourself? You always lose, because there is always someone with more money, more followers, more charisma, more intelligence. And there you are, playing a game that can't be won. A game designed to keep you dissatisfied, to always make you believe you're missing something. Something that, coincidentally, always depends on external recognition. The system feeds on that, on your insecurity, on your fear of not being enough, on your emotional dependence on external validation. And while you sink into doubts, there's a whole industry making millions from your need to be seen, Apps, brands, influencers, gurus, they all feed on the same fuel, your emptiness. And it's no accident. It's structural. It's cultural. They want you anxious. They want you insecure. Because a secure human being doesn't need anything. And that doesn't sell. But there is a way out. One that not many are willing to take because it's hard. Because it demands courage. It demands silence. It demands losing the noise to find yourself. It demands disappearing from the world for a while to return to you. And that path begins with a single question. What part of your life would change if no one were watching? What would you do differently if you knew you would never be judged? What would you choose if you no longer needed approval? That exercise changes everything, because it forces you to return to the origin, to ask yourself, what do I want? What moves me without witnesses? What decisions would I make if I stopped asking myself if I'm going to disappoint? That is the compass you have ignored for years. And there is no external GPS that can replace it. What's real is internal, power is internal, and everything you're looking for out there is already inside you. Only the noise has covered it. So start filtering, start cutting, stop following those who don't inspire you. Stop talking to those who only drain you. Stop posting things that don't reflect anything. Stop looking at your reflection through others' eyes. And start inhabiting your skin, building an identity that doesn't need witnesses. Because the true revolution isn't shouting louder. It's not needing to be heard. That's where true strength begins. And now I ask you, do you dare? Or will you keep playing the character you designed to be accepted? Because if you've come this far, something inside you is already breaking. You feel it, right? A part of you begins to suspect that this whole facade isn't worth it. That this routine of perfection, constant performance, daily validation, makes no sense. And just when you think you've seen all the faces of the problem, another, even more disturbing one appears: emotional disconnection. Yes, because when you live for others, you end up feeling for them too. You lose the right to feel honestly. You censor yourself not only in what you say, but also in what you feel. Because if you get angry, you bother. If you get sad, you make others uncomfortable. If you show vulnerability, you risk. So you end up anesthetized. You appear calm, you fake joy, you counterfeit enthusiasm. You become an expert in modulating your voice, your face, your body, everything to not disturb the environment. But inside, you are empty, emotionally malnourished. And no one notices, because you've made sure no one notices. And do you know what happens when you've been faking emotions for too long? You forget how it really feels. You confuse pleasure with dopamine. You confuse love with need. You confuse success with exhibition. And little by little, your inner world becomes a waiting room. Everything you live feels postponed. Nothing is fully lived. Everything is performed. When was the last time you felt something deeply, without fear of how you would look? When was the last time you cried without justification, laughed without holding back, got angry without guilt? That's the invisible damage. That's the silent price of living under others' gaze. Your emotional life becomes sterilized. And then something even darker happens. You begin to doubt your own intuition. You no longer know if you really like someone, or if they just fit the profile you idealized. You no longer know if you want that job, or if you only care about the status. You no longer know if something hurts, or if you just should feel pain. You lose the filter. You become a stranger inside yourself. And meanwhile, you keep feeding that version of you everyone admires. The problem is that you don't admire it, You suffer it. It's an elegant, functional, admirable version, but false. And here comes a brutal truth. Many reach success and sink because they discover they built it from need, not authenticity. Because everything they obtained was designed to please others, not to nourish themselves. And then they have everything and feel nothing. That's the silent ruin, the golden void, success that shines on the outside but corrodes within. And what do you do then? Go back? Rebuild? Break with everything? The vertigo of that idea is enormous, because it means facing everything you've avoided. It means looking your own emotional mediocrity in the face. And no one wants that. It's much more comfortable to keep acting, keep posting, keep pleasing. But there is an alternative. A less traveled path, but infinitely more real. Return to yourself. Not to who you were, but to what has always been beneath all the masks. That path begins with one word: detachment. Detachment isn't coldness. It's not isolation. It's clarity. It's understanding that nothing from the outside can give you what you haven't cultivated inside. It's understanding that you can enjoy recognition, but not depend on it. That you can share your life, but not sell it. That you can love without losing yourself. That you can fail without destroying yourself. Detaching is recovering your center. It's breathing without permission. Moving without justification. Existing without having to exhibit yourself. And for that, you have to do something that terrifies most. Stop. Turn off the noise. Disconnect. Not forever, but long enough to listen to yourself. Because most people don't know who they are because they have never been silent long enough to find out. We live overstimulated, saturated with information, opinions, images, all designed so you never look at yourself. Because if you do, you might not like what you see. Or worse, you might discover there is nothing, and that is 0 point, the true beginning, the blank page that scares so much. But without that page, you will never write your real story. And now listen to this. You don't need to reinvent yourself. You don't need to become someone new. You only need to remove the layers. It's not about creating a new you. It's about unearthing the you that has been buried under expectations for years. And here appears the paradox. When you stop trying to impress, that's when you impress the most. Because authenticity has a magnetism no mask can replicate. You don't need to shout your worth. You don't need to prove your light. When you live from who you are, people notice. And yes, some will walk away, but others will come closer, and they will be the right ones. Because when you change, your environment changes. When you stop begging for approval, you start surrounding yourself with people who don't need you to beg for anything. People who see you, not for what you appear to be, but for what you emanate. People who don't applaud you for fitting in, but respect you for being. But for that, you have to cross the desert of discomfort, of initial solitude, of fear of not being enough. You have to resist the urge to go back, to return to the disguise, to apologize for being you. Because if you resist, something happens, something magical, something irreversible. You start feeling comfortable in your own skin. You start sleeping better, laughing better, speaking calmer. You no longer need to impress. You no longer need to fill silences. You no longer need to exist for the other's eye. Finally, you are free. And here's something to take with you. You didn't come to this life to be a projection. You came to experience, to discover, to make mistakes, to reinvent yourself. No one promised you would please everyone, and that's fine. Because real freedom is not being loved by all. It's not needing it. Real peace is not the absence of judgment. It's not depending on its verdict. And most importantly, authenticity doesn't guarantee success, but it guarantees coherence. And sleeping with a clear conscience, knowing that what you do, say, and feel are aligned, that's priceless. So stop hiding, stop editing yourself, stop begging, and start walking, even if the ground trembles, even if there are no applause, even if no one sees it, because you will see it, and that is enough. And if you got this far, maybe you're no longer the same person who started watching this video, because something inside you has moved, something has broken, and at the same time, something has awakened. And that feeling you have now, that burning in your chest, is not anxiety. It's hunger for truth. It's your essence trying to surface after years of confinement. And if you dare to follow that spark, if you don't extinguish it with excuses nor hinder it with fear, then everything can change. But be careful, because right now is when you're most vulnerable. Because right now you'll want to return to the pattern. That little voice will appear telling you, relax, don't change so much, don't exaggerate, don't be weird, don't draw attention. And now that we've made it this far, before we continue, I want to present the following to you. Our book, The Formula of Awakening, is now available. Do you feel like there's something inside you that wants to awaken, but you don't know where to start? Then I invite you to transform your way of thinking, and with it, your way of living. Discover who you can become. Start today. The link to get the ebook is in the first pinned comment of this video. Grab your copy now at a great price. With that said, let's continue with the video. But now you know, that voice is not yours. That voice is an echo, a repetition of years of conditioning, a cage with a sweet voice. Ignore it. Move forward anyway, even if your body shakes, even if your mind tells you no, because there is something more important than your comfort, your authenticity. And I swear, if you cross that barrier, what's on the other side is not terror. It's peace. Peace not because everything is fine, but because you are finally being you. Because you are finally acting from the center and not from the mirror. Because you no longer depend, you no longer beg, you no longer wait for permission, and that no one can take away from you. Now I want you to do something. Something small, something symbolic, but powerful. Write in the comments, I no longer act for anyone. Write it as a commitment to yourself, as an anchor, as a declaration of independence, not for me to read, not for others to see. Write it for you, to remind yourself that you're no longer for sale, that you no longer need to be applauded to exist. And if this video has made you think, if at any moment it has made you uncomfortable, if it has forced you to face things you preferred not to look at, then subscribe. But not for support. Do it to remind yourself every time I upload a new video that this process continues, that there are still more layers to shed, that there is still a way to go. Because if you stay, we will keep uncovering truths. We will keep breaking molds. We will keep digging until there is nothing false left in you. And remember, this channel is not to please you. It's to make you uncomfortable, to shake you, to face you with what no one else dares to tell you. Because out there is too much noise, but here we go to the bone. So thank you for making it to the end. But above all, thank you for enduring the truth, for not running away, for staying even when it hurt. Not everyone does. And that, even if you don't see it now, already puts you ahead of many. Now go, but don't leave the same. Leave with a different pulse. Leave with a decision made. Leave with a promise. The next time your mind starts acting for others, you will stop. You will remind yourself you're not an actor, You're not on stage. You owe nothing to anyone. You came to be, not to convince. And if someone tells you that you've changed, tell them no. Tell them that, finally, you have come back. See you in the next video. Or not. Maybe you don't need it anymore. But if you come back, make sure you haven't regressed.